Okay, and welcome back, students who are taking Math for Business and Finance and Math Applications. This should say 3. Let me change that. There we go. So this here is the theory videos for Chapter 14, Installment Buying, and as you just saw, this is part number 3. Right? And so let's jump right down to the next to last slide here. Okay. We'll cover both of these slides in this video. So this one, this concept is about calculating finance charge on the previous month's balance. Okay, and I wrote here the U.S. rule, which we had covered in Chapter 10. And if you remember from that chapter, the U.S. rule states that when we make a payment, we apply the payment against the interest first, and then the remaining balance goes against the principal. Okay, so Table 14.3 is a schedule of payments, and you can look at this in the textbook and follow along. I realize that's a little bit sketchy here, okay? But in using this particular example, all right, and I'm just going to work through this so that you can see how we work through this, okay? We're going to start out with in this column here is the monthly payment number. Okay, so this is monthly payment number 1. And at the beginning of the month, the outstanding balance due is $8,000. So the interest is 1.5% interest on the payment. Well, remember, we need to figure out what that finance charge is, what that interest is. So we take our principal, which is the 8,000, and we multiply it by 1.5%. Okay. Remember, 1.5% in decimal format is 0.015. Okay, and that's what you see right here. Okay. So when we multiply that 8,000 by 1.5%, we end up with $120 in interest. Okay, and that's what's in that column. So this right here, when you're looking at the table, is just the calculation of the math. You don't actually have to include it on the table because all it is just an explanation of how to arrive at the $120 right there. Okay? So we have in this column here at 1.5% interest. Okay, so that's the interest on $8,000 ends up being $120. Now, the amount of the monthly payment is $500. Okay, well, remember, due to the U.S. rule, right, we have to pay off the interest first, and the remaining amount goes into the principal. So if my payment was $500 and $120 goes against interest, right, then that means the remaining $380 goes against the principal, and that's what you get in this column here. Okay, so the reduction in the balance due or in the principal amount. Now notice I said balance due, and I also use the term principal amount. Principal or principal amount. The terms are interchangeable. Okay, so it's not like you don't already know how to do this. It's just different terminology. Okay, so well, that should have been 380, not just 80. I had written 120, and I had written just 80. It should have been 380. Okay, but anyway, so that's the amount that goes against the principal, all right, or the remaining balance due. And again, there's the calculation. You don't need to put it on the chart. Okay, just like you didn't need to put this one on the chart. And they put it there for explanation purposes so that you know how that amount is arrived at. Okay, and so my outstanding balance due is my beginning balance of the 8,000 minus the principal amount, right? So 8,000 less $380 means that I have a new balance due of $7,620, right? Which is that amount right there. And again, there's the calculation. You don't need to put it on the chart if you don't want, but it's there for the explanation of it. Okay. So now we have a new outstanding balance due, okay, of $7,620. Okay, so we had just completed the first month, but now we're going to go to the second month. So we take the 7,620 and that goes over here to the second month. So we have a new outstanding balance, and then we're just doing the same exact process all the way through, okay? And we just keep on doing it again and again and again. So we have this new balance of 7620, and we're multiplying it by our interest payment of 1.5%, and that gives us interest of $114.30, right? Which you see right there. And again, this is just the math right here, okay? You don't have to put it on the table if you don't want, as long as you're doing it correctly. That's just the explanation for it. So we end up with $114.30 in interest. Again, we're making a $500 payment, and if we subtract out the $114.30 in interest, we end up with $385.70 that goes against the principal or the balance due, okay? And that's what we put in that column. And again, there's the math for it. You don't need to put it on there if you don't want. So we have $385.70 in principal, all due to the U.S. rule saying that we have to pay the interest first, okay, of the $114.30. So this is the amount that goes against the principal, and since our balance was $76.20 at the beginning of this period, we're going to subtract out the $385.70, and now we have a new balance of $72.34.30, which is right there. Okay, and again, there's the math. Right? So now that we have a new balance of $72.34.30, right there, that outstanding balance due now becomes the beginning balance for our next period. Okay, and we just go through the math again. All right, and I'm not going to go through it a third time, but we would just keep on doing it again and again and again for the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, however many number of months it takes in order to pay off that balance. Okay, and what we've done is we've created a schedule of payments so that when we look at it, okay, what we actually see, and remember, if I was creating a true schedule, I would not really leave this, I would not leave these mathematical calculations in here. These are for explanation purposes, and you're kind of expected to be able to know how to read this schedule and how the math works. So a true schedule, you wouldn't see the math. You would see just the amounts here, okay? And just these amounts, and just these amounts, because you are expected to know how to do this math when you're looking at the schedule of payments. Okay, so in the schedule of payments would just go on and on and on until you got down to a zero balance, so that you can go down and you can see that, okay, here's what my interest was for each and every period, and here was the application against the principal. I know that the amount that I'm making for a monthly payment is $500, and that should stay the same all the way through. And just the adjustment in my outstanding balances. Now, the thought just occurred to me that part of the reason why you create a schedule like this is, like the bank or a loan officer would give you this so that if you were in a business, you'd be able to make your journal entries knowing how much the principal amount is and how much the interest amount is, for you to be able to make your journal entries. But also be aware that, what happens if I double up on a payment? Well, then all of a sudden, let's say I didn't make this as a $500 payment. Let's say I had made this as a $750 payment instead. Okay, well, you'd have this schedule, it would already be pre-printed, but then you would have to go along and you would have to adjust it. Why? Well, if I started out with this beginning balance and and I'm going to owe this much in interest, well, out of $750, I'm going to subtract $108.51, which would mean I have 49 from 9, that's 1, 4, so I'd have, instead of $391.49, I'd have $641.49, okay, of principal. And then that would change my outstanding balance from 723430, and I would subtract 641.49, which would give me 18295, which would give me a new balance here, okay, of 6592.81, and that would be the beginning balance for my next period, okay? And then I'd still do the math, because you don't know, I mean, even though I paid, an extra $250 in principal here, okay, I could revert back to, maybe I just happen to have extra cash. Well, now all of these numbers on that schedule would have to be adjusted, okay, as you would go along. So you'll see that happen. Right? And that's the purpose behind having a schedule of payments, is so that you can see how much the principal is and the interest is, in order to be able to make journal entries on your books. Okay, and let's see here. All right, let me stop here, because I took quite a long time there for that concept, because calculating the average daily balance is going to take just a little bit of time also. So I'll see you in part 4.